Welcome to the Ed O'Keefe Show. Transform your mind, accelerate your business, energize your body, and inspire the world. Now here is your host, Ed O'Keefe.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Ed O'Keefe Show. This episode is going to blow you away. My good friend, Paul Kirchoff. I've tested some long-form stuff. Most of my interviews in the past have been shorter form, meaning between 30 minutes and 1 hour. We go beyond the hour mark, and I'll tell you something, this was one of the most fun, insightful interviews that I've probably ever done, and you've seen the list of people that I've interviewed. To give a little background on Paul, Paul is an avid entrepreneur, investor, and global adventurer. In this interview, he'll tell the story about how he just jumped on an airplane, went to Iceland, and ended up surrounded by a bunch of Olympians and women, and how he does that a ton of times because he is, as he says in the interview, a confirmed bachelor. He's the founder and CEO of EPX, an exclusive community of adventuring entrepreneurs wanting to drive faster businesses, success, and max out the planet's most amazing experiences. He lives this personally. He was most recently the founder and CEO of Sale Amp, a 7-year-old Austin, Texas-based pay-for-performance digital marketing agency, which he exited and sold in the past few years. He's also, there's more things about him we talk about in this interview, but he's also directed and sold a film, sold thousands of copies of a corporate thriller novel. He's currently involved in a multinational effort to bring internet connectivity and banking to the poor, and is building another software venture that will accelerate problem solving for humanity's most pressing needs. He talks about this and how he actually shared this vision with Richard Branson, and he tells us in the interview what Richard's response was to it. And so you're going to get to hear all of that. Now, one quick thing about this interview is that this interview is sponsored by No Foods. As many of you know, I am an investor in No Foods. That's KNOWFOODS, because it is literally going to be disrupting and changing how bread is reimagined in the United States and beyond. The main problem is that bread is broken, people. Wheat, grain, white bread, all of it is just destroying our cells, adding sugar, spiking our insulin, and is one of the main precursors to obesity, heart disease, diabetes, and so many other problems, ADHD. You can go on, and actually they're showing that like a lot of these things that we're putting in our bodies, these toxins, are the main causes of the worst diseases ever, including cancer and even Alzheimer's. So not to scare you too much, but why is No Foods totally different is that it's not bread, but it's the first natural, non-GMO, grain-free, and great tasting alternative to traditional grain-based bread that is gluten, wheat, dairy, peanut, soy, yeast, preservative, and guilt-free. It's a unique formulation born of art, vision, and applied food science, the best ranking on overall nutritional and glycemic index scales. Now, what that means, because I didn't understand that at first, I had to actually go do it and check it out, is that your blood sugar does not spike. Insulin does not then store all the fat, and your brain doesn't get all foggy, which is some of the most common problems that we all face. So, anyhow, check it out at No Foods, KNOWFOODS.com. I personally love their waffles, their chocolate chip muffins, and their donuts. All the sweet things. So, hey, go buy it, check it out, tag me, tag the Ed O'Keefe Show, and let me know what you think, and I appreciate it. So with that said, without further ado, let's jump into this interview with Mr. Paul Kirchoff. Hey, everybody, I'm here with my really good friend, Paul Kirchoff, whom, if you tag him on Facebook, you will probably see him. I call him the modern day James Bond, because when he's not with Richard Branson, he's in just the most luxurious, gorgeous places in the world. In fact, like I was saying before we got on the call, we actually met. Did you and I meet? I think we met in War Room or in Austin or something like that. But we really became friends when we met in Curacao.
Yeah, it was a random location to meet, but we had fun.
Yeah, so we were both speaking at a seminar, and it was kind of interesting. There wasn't anything to do, so we just kind of hung out by the bar and the pool for a day, like 2 days between our talks, and it was actually really nice. So I told Paul before we jumped on that I'm really excited to catch up with him, because you're gonna overhear a very informal catch up and background with this amazing guy. So first, yeah. So so first and foremost, we'll go a little bit into your background as a business and stuff like that.
Sure.
But just the quick recap is, since the last time we saw each other, when I saw you, you were running your agency that you had founded. Was this Sale Lamp?
Yeah, a handful of years ago.
Yeah,
8 years ago.
Yeah, and you had sold it since the last time we spoke, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So talk about, just give everybody who's listening just the background on what Sale Lamp was,
sure.
And your kind of unique superpower that you started it with, I guess,
Yeah, no worries, man. I mean, I've been a serial entrepreneur for a long time, mostly software companies. This last one, this digital marketing agency, was highly technical, a lot of software, but we were really responsible for generating demand for a wide range of clients. And the interesting thing is that, I learned a lot in growing that. I think at one point we probably had close to maybe 175 full-time equivalent employees, some overseas, some contractors, but it got to be pretty big, and you learn a lot of lessons, I think, going from self-funding something from zero to something like that. There's a lot of paths that you kind of go through. But I still have a small piece of that, believe it or not. There's a much longer story to probably share with you, but the transaction went well. And I still have about 15 employees that are cranking on Sale Lamp, the agency. So we're still doing some of that. But what's interesting is a lot of operational lessons and inventions, I guess, along the way has allowed me to free up enough time as an entrepreneur to go pursue some new ventures. And so I have two that I'm working on right now. They're both software-based, and they're for different reasons. I think that instead of going for how do you make the next big dollar, some of these are lifestyle-based that make me happy, and some of them are impacting the world, which is something that I think all of us want to get the opportunity to do. And so that's kind of a catch-up since the last time we've been speaking.
Yeah.
I've been adventuring the planet like nobody's business. So even though you're right, there's some cool places that I've gone to, it seems like every 2 weeks I'm somewhere crazy, sometimes all alone, sometimes with no amenities whatsoever, because it's a chance to be spiritual and reflective and, in solitude. And other times it's, on Necker Island with Richard Branson or doing some other crazy stuff. So
let's talk about business and money first, and then we'll segue into the adventure and the spirituality components of it. I wrote down a lot of notes. You said a big chunk there very quickly. So you self-funded this, and you self-funded your. Let's just take us back. So you self-funded your agency from scratch.
Yeah.
When we had spoke, you had 175 employees. Did you come to a point where you realized you didn't want to have, did you exit yourself out of being day-to-day operations guy? Are you more on the quick start side as the visionary? Well, here's the thing. This is a very, very interesting and personal topic, I think, for me, because I think that very often, I'm going to answer your question in a roundabout way, but I think this is valuable because after 40-something years on this planet, I've learned a lot, and especially in the last 3 years, I think it's accelerated. But here's the thing. I was gonna say you've gotten a lot older in the last 3 years, buddy. So. I've gotten a lot older. I've gotten a lot happier too, which is nice. I love it. Pretty good. That's what matters. I love it. But the thing is that I think that the world in business tries to pigeonhole or force you into being visionary or being an operator. Let's call it an operator or an integrator, the person that's kind of a COO. Yeah. And the reality is that I don't think you can launch a business unless you have both of those skills. Certainly not bootstrapping a business. There are people that raise money that are very good visionaries. They have no interest in operating anything, and they have the financial wherewithal to hire a COO, and they can therefore divide and conquer. I have not had that luxury. I mean, as a matter of fact, this is the second company that I've built and sold, and I have the perfect distinction of always launching a business at the top of a downturn in the economy, in a recession, which means there is no funding available. You have to survive and pay your bills and not make a mistake or you're dead. Right. There's a million things that most entrepreneurs know can kill you, but especially when you have no money in the bank and you're starting on your own. So I think the visionary piece and the operator piece
you have to start by being a visionary, but you very quickly better operate and focus on the right things and make sure that you don't make a mistake or you're dead. That said, to answer your question, there are different types of personalities as leaders. I have found that my comfort zone and what I really like is, to be honest, is being more of a sergeant in battle or a lieutenant in battle than a general. There are some people that are generals naturally, and they like to move chess pieces around. I actually had a hard time getting to that point because I'm so emotionally connected to the people that are in the battle with me that I treat them equally. I lead by example. I work harder than they do. I'm the first one in and last one out. All the things that you would want from a leader that you respect and love. And as you grow a business, you are forced to, at some point, become disconnected from the amount of time you have with those people in battle, because the amount of people are getting bigger, the organization's getting bigger, and now you have to go find the sergeants that have the same qualities that you have and the same values, while you kind of ascend to another degree. So at some point it was a little bit tricky to kind of get to that point. And quite frankly, I think when you're distanced and you're an emotional leader and you're distanced from people at the front lines, you struggle with how to lead from afar, because it's very different than being able to sit somebody down face to face and mentor them and to comfort them and to guide them, at the right time. And so that was a little bit of a transitional struggle in real life, but I made it there. What I found though is that I wasn't nearly as happy. I was being pulled away from the invention side of things and the problem solving on the creative side. And so I kind of decided that it's much more fulfilling for me to spend my time on those things. And I did exactly what you were talking about, Ed. I mean, I had a badass COO that, helped to offload some of those things right as we were starting to take off. And that helped. So, there's a lot of answers in what I just gave you, but
I'll tell you, I think one of the things you said there was perfect, because even like yesterday. So yesterday was, no one was really working. I was in here for about 8 hours by myself, reverse engineering a funnel and going through very, very small things that once it's kind of nailed down and figured out, I don't really need to be on that daily.
Yeah.
And some people would argue like, well, you shouldn't even be on that now. But there's also, so that's where I agree. I struggle with that whole visionary. Are you an operator, integrator, visionary? And this is how you have to structure your business, because what might work for like you or me might be different than the next guy. And especially when you throw lifestyle in it, No,
I think there's so much to it, but here's the deal. I guess my fundamental answer to, hey, is somebody a visionary or an integrator? I think over time, there's things that they want to do, even though they may have the capability to do both. And there's some people that just don't have one gene or the other. But I think for the most part, I would just like throw the word bullshit out at that whole thing and just ignore it, because I think when you first start a company, and this was the same, I think, you have to invest so many hours to get something off the ground, 18 hours a day, maybe more, for a long period of time. And if you're in a service business or you're doing what you're doing in a funnel business, your talent is so great because A, you're starting the company, and B, you're putting in way more time than the average Joe, that you become the expert. The hard part is once you become the world expert at what you do, is you cannot remain the show, or you don't have a company. You're a slave to your business.
Yeah.
So then what happens is you have to somehow, and this is actually one of the most magical points that I learned in the last, probably 5 or 6 years, is your creativity and the amount of work that you put in becomes less about the specific technique or the specific set of domain experience, and you have to start to become an architect of systems. So for example, let me give you an example. I think there's been times in my life, maybe twice, that I feel like I would have considered myself as good as anybody on the planet at what I do. I think there was one when I was in my 20s, and I think I was getting there to a certain extent in digital marketing a handful of years ago. However, people would hire the company because it was me, because of my knowledge. Well, eventually, you can't grow a company and handle all that stuff at the same time. It's the Paul show going to represent with every single client. You run out of hours in a day. So what I realized is that I had to go get more employees. Well, if you get more employees and they're not exactly the same as you, now you have a problem because the talent and the experience level is not exactly for. So what I had to learn the hard way is I had to actually go and start working on systems with guardrails that less experienced people could operate within, that would allow them to be their greatest potential, but not necessarily have to somehow auto-magically invent the 15 years of experience gap that they had versus me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally does. Totally does. Because I think when we were in Curacao, you were going through that phase at that time, right?
Yeah. I mean, as a matter of fact, I think I was probably on the other end of having grown and having to deal with, and there's a lot of other things that, were in that presentation that I gave. We don't have to get into all of them, but another thing is, if you're bootstrapping a company and you're the show and you're starting to build your way out of being the show, you have to then worry about how you're balancing, money, because you're trying to grow. At the same time, you're trying to put some money away for a rainy day. But as you're growing, you're having to hire people very quickly to plug gaps. And if you hire too quickly without the right interview structure, you can end up with a lot of C players in your company that can kill culture and cause the A players a lot of angst. So there was a lot of growth lessons learned as well. Have
you changed your opinion on cash flowing businesses versus raising capital, or do you have any? I mean, I just you and I never really spoke about that. I've always cash flowed my own businesses. I'm an investor in No Foods right now, KNOW foods.com, which is it's a grain-free, gluten-free, wheat-free, dairy-free, peanut-free, soy-free, non-GMO, near zero glycemic index. It's disrupting the bread market, but it's muffins, waffles, donuts, bread slices, everything you can imagine that people would have, but it doesn't have the sugar. It doesn't have all the stuff that's killing people in it. But what's really cool about it, and I'll get back to my question in a second. What's really cool about it, from learning, since I'm one of the first investors, I'm also helping with the online strategy and all the relationships I've built out in the health market. Mm-hmm. But what's really cool for me to see is I'm waiting to see hey, why aren't we marketing the heck out of stuff? And it's because when you're going to try and disrupt an entire $22 billion market, mm-hmm. The capacity to deliver is almost more important than your marketing strategy. If you have a truly better, so for example, the bread is when you compare what the qualities from that inside all the other competitive companies, mm-hmm. we're not going to have a challenge with claiming we're the best, because it is the best, and all the people coming on board are going to give enough authority to that, Yeah. Yep. But they'd never be able to do this without capital. There's no way. You'd be just another person. I see people who become clients or come to my events or whatever, and they have gluten-free protein bars and other stuff, and they're so hand-strapped, or because they don't have enough capital, What do you have any, I guess, just do you have any just off the cuff thoughts on this? Have you thought about it, and do you have any opinions on it?
Yeah, well, like I said, I mean, I for better or for worse, I mean, I have always mistimed the market when starting businesses. So I've never even had the chance, capital markets were at the angel level or even venture level were evaporated every time I start one of these things. So I just don't have a chance other than to survive long enough to find the vein of gold and then hit it. It's worked out, but it's also very difficult. I do think that at some point, there's always the right time to raise money. And, what you would learn or hear, I think if you're standing around other entrepreneurs or investors, is this careful balance game of how far along can you get your business in order to give up the least amount of equity when you raise money. And I definitely think that that's true. I'll give you an example. I was in Norway, in Oslo, and I'm at this event with a lot of young entrepreneurs that are all tech startups. And I go through the I go through the meeting, talking to one person after another, and they're not really pitching me, but they're giving me their just their status. And every single conversation is Series A, Series A, Series A, Series B, whatever it may be. So finally, at the end of the meeting, I had a chance to speak, and I stood up on top of a table and I said, I just wanted to share like one of the most valuable pieces of guidance to you younger guys and gals that no one's saying to you in this community. And mine was this. Mine was focus your time and energy on getting to break even as soon as possible. And it doesn't matter whether it's exactly connected to your dream or not, because the faster you get to break even, the more time you have for the dream to develop. And therefore, the more time you have for the dream to develop, the further along you are. And then at some point, when you find the vein of gold, that's when you raise money, because you're not in a rush. You're not in, if you're talking to me about needing Series A, guess what? Your business is already dying. So my whole point is that I think there's that element of preserving equity and raising money at exactly the right time. But on the other hand, I think you have to know what business and market you're getting into. Because, for example, if you start a marketing agency or a service in an area that's massively fragmented, there's tons of mom and pops and big guys. I spent zero time ever even thinking about competition. Never analyzed a single other agency, because it's everywhere. So I just focused on trying to add value and developing really cool services that nobody else had, and then waiting to find that vein of gold. Now, in some cases along the way, I had to build websites or stuff that I really didn't want to do as part of the dream, but it was paying the bills and allowing me to keep finding that vein of gold. At some point, I think when you're big enough, even in a fragmented market, that's when the dogs are eating the dog food, you got some horsepower yourself, and then there's an opportunity to take a much bigger step. But I think, then there's things like your food deal, right? You can bootstrap that only so far, and then in order to take it the full length of the field, you have to raise money. So I don't know whether there's a hard and fast rule. I just know that in my path, it's been very valuable to do whatever it takes to survive long enough until the vein of gold, always going down the same highway, but not knowing exactly what lane you're going to end up on.
Yep, totally.
But because eventually the lane will show itself as long as you stay alive long enough, and that's when you raise money.
Yeah, it's so funny. Like recently, I've been listening a lot to Seth Godin and James Altucher, and there's one other dude who's going to come to mind. And these guys are it's funny how like Seth Godin talks about just create something that's badass for one person or three people. Because if 3 people love it, 1,000 will love it. And if 1,000 love it, 10,000 will love it. It's, if you go back and read Peter Thiel's book, 0 to 1, he talks about how PayPal finally realized that, like, look, if we can dominate this one market of 20,000 people, we can scale. But if we can't do that, then we're wasting if we can't do that, that's like, we can call it ground zero, then we can't scale. And I see one of the biggest misconceptions and mistakes a lot of entrepreneurs make, especially startups or guys with new ideas, is this is the next big thing. How do we scale it? And that's their operating question. Whereas the first question should be exactly what you mentioned. How do we get to break even or profitable as quickly as humanly possible with people who love our stuff? And then just you can take the chains off,
Yeah, totally. Well, and just a real life example of this. And I think this is important too, because I think entrepreneurs, you can lose faith. I see this all the time when things aren't going the way you had planned, which of course, everybody knows it never does. But here's the thing. And a perfect example is this agency, SaleAmp. When I first started the company, let me tell you what I did. It was actually a software company, believe it or not. So how there's like Infusionsoft and maybe a couple other ones where you get some sales or data in a system, and then all of a sudden here's autoresponders and all this stuff happens, right? So I was literally building that both in a digital print, physical world and email world, 10 years ago, right? That's what the company was supposed to be. But here's what happened. So being a smart bootstrapper, this is the second time I've done this, I go assemble a team. I tell everybody, guess what? Nobody leave your job, right? But we're going to meet every single week at Starbucks. We're going to go over project plans. We're going to build some software. We're going to get this thing together. Nobody leave your job. So the first step that was smart was that I was using other people's jobs and those companies as venture capital, which a lot of people, don't realize you can do, but you have to operate with commitment and manage that like over a long period of time. What I was trying to do is to get the software to a point where it was built so I could go sell it, right? And then therefore I'm that much further along. So what happened is we go build it. I go out to this market. The market was going to be a whole bunch of like mortgage and real estate professionals and maybe some brokers. And I find out, holy cow, like it's going to take me forever. And I don't even have marketing money to go get people to buy this thing for a subscription of whatever it was, $99 a month, right?
Yeah.
I got to switch gears. So in order to pay the bills, we started building websites. It's because we knew that if we built websites, we could do it with our eyes closed, and then we could connect it to this back end thing as people got leads, and then we kind of drip market these guys to death. Well, what happened is we ended up building websites. Then we met a couple guys that needed a CRM system for a lot of sales agents. So all of a sudden now we're building websites. Now we're connecting it to CRM system, and then we're connecting our autoresponder thing in the back end. And then all of a sudden, now that we had the whole back end thing, here comes requests for demand generation. Now they got to fuel the funnel. And so we started to realize that if we took our technical expertise and loaded on the front end, which everybody needs, then all of a sudden the sales started going nuts. And all of a sudden, we were not a software company. We were a digital marketing agency that was highly technical.
Love it.
Right?
Yep.
I would have never ever even thought about that on day one. But again, back to what I was saying, we did what it took to pay the bills, and we stayed alive long enough to where the veins of gold came,
Yeah, I love it, dude. That's a great story. It's a great story. Geez, man, these are some questions I had no idea I was going to ask you, but I'm going to ask you. How do you incentivize? What are your thoughts around incentive? Like when you're building, like, because obviously you have two other new startups you're doing now, or software-based projects, whether it's under the same umbrella or not. But, even with my company now, Marine Essentials, we're reinventing things. So I'm bringing on different high-level talented people. And I've always found that guys who just want a high flat rate end up being the worst employees versus somebody who's like, Ed, I just really want to work with you. And I want a piece of the action, or I want to make money and get commissions or whatever. But what's your thoughts on the whole incentivizing and building a team of A players?
Well, I think part of my question back to you would be at what stage, because there's the people that we're meeting at Starbucks, and then there's the people that are coming in when you have an ongoing business that is stable.
I'll throw it back at you. So let's talk about both stages. I mean,
okay. Well, I think that, just like anything in marketing, you have to know your audience. And in some cases, everybody, what makes everybody tick at a motivational and emotional level is unique. For example, when you start a company and it's tech based, and you're getting people to stay in their jobs and work with you, there's obviously the hope. I think there's two elements. There's equity, right?
Yeah.
And there's also the hope that it will become something that they can then join, because very few people that are willing to do that work outside of their job are 100% fulfilled with their existing job. So, like, for example, when I was originally starting, both bootstrap companies, I basically said to these guys, look, you're not going to have to leave your job. I'm going to give you some equity as we build this thing. You are not required to leave your job when this happens, but hopefully the opportunity will be there. There were no promises. So what it was for them is people that are in jobs that need those jobs to pay their bills in the early stages. There's on one, and I mean this in a good way and not in an underhanded way, but there's benefits to an entrepreneur because those people have to stay in their jobs. They may not be happy. Everybody wants a home run in their life. And so to give them a lottery ticket that is measured with their time, that they're not going to risk their family, but they can invest it with you, you're giving them a benefit. What you're giving yourself is a path to get talent with the least amount of equity given up, because they're not leaving, they're not taking risks, they're not leaving their jobs, right? Yet they are committing to you.
So it's a very smart way of starting even a software company, for God's sakes. I don't know many other ways to do it without raising money. So
this is actually, let me just jump in here. This was actually, what you just laid out is actually brilliant. On many levels, you're actually testing, because it gives you as the CEO, it de-risks their risk, but it also de-risks your level of risk, and you're also testing out. You're actually doing a form of top grading without having to formally top grade, right?
Well, not only that, it's even better than that, because the risk to you is time, not money, right?
Yeah.
So let's just say you want to start an enterprise software company and you have no money in the bank. What you can do is find the guy at Cisco, the guy at Oracle, and the woman at Dell who have all the skills you need. They have families. They cannot leave their job or their insurance coverage. You can't give it to them. You don't have any money, but you can work, but you can bring them an idea, organize them, manage them, and they have a lottery ticket that could become something. And what you get is no money out of pocket. You get unbelievable talent, and you advance with the majority of equity ownership. And by the way, because you're not making promises that they're going to leave their job and they're not partners necessarily, you're talking about giving them up a couple of points, not like, 20, 20, 20, 20, right? You're walking out of there having had software built and the opportunity to take it to become something, and still, maintaining, 85% plus equity.
Yeah, I love it. Love it, man.
But it also takes a while, right? Versus raising money, you could drop the money in the bank and go hire the team, right? Or whatever, even offshore, and all of a sudden you're rolling much faster. So
yeah.
There's pros and cons to all of it, but I think for the most part, it's, if you're going to build, see, here's the thing. If you assemble a team, which this will also work for services, and you can start selling, as long as you organize yourself a little bit with some prep work, you can start selling services and making money for everybody, and they can stay in their jobs, right? You just have a capacity issue until you're ready to start transitioning people into the company.
Right.
But it also works for software, which for most entrepreneurs that have a software idea, you're dead in the water without money unless you do something like this. And one last thing I'll say, just because I think this is like a little bit of, passing the baton, is when you structure somebody's equity, you definitely don't just grant them shares, right? You can call them founder shares, but what I did is I said, look, because, you're in a job and you have a family, and, although you're very stable, we don't know how this is going to pan out. I'm going to give you 1% of the company in shares, because and you can call yourself a founder from here till the end of time, right? Because at the end of the day, a founder the guy who's really pushing it has to divorce your ego from the fact that you're the founder and nobody else is, because it doesn't matter when you have a successful company. But you give these guys a little something so they can call themselves founders, which, by the way, is very emotionally significant for people who are in a job that wish they could be a founder and take all the risks. So you give them that, you give them a little bit of shares, and then you say, for the rest of your shares, whatever it may be, we're going to put it on like a 2-year vesting schedule. So you have to make it with me past 6 months. It's called a cliff. And as soon as I know that you've made it past 6 months and you've contributed, you're going to vest everything for the first 6 months. And then from that point on, it's month to month. Every month that we're working together, you keep getting 1/24th more of whatever that grant was. And that gives you the cliff gives you the ability to not give something away to somebody that only lasts for 2 months, and then they get sidetracked or move. And that's what that's for. And then the vesting schedule with a little bit of length on it, like 2 years, gives you the ability to only give up what value you're actually getting.
Right. Hey, Paul, how did you, I know you went to business school at University of Texas, right? Mm-hmm. How did you learn these intricacies? Was this something that you had to find mentors for, study on your own? Is this just grassroots lessons that you learned these types of these are a little more advanced strategies, so I love it.
Yeah, for better or for worse, Texas, which is a great MBA school, probably a top 15 school, taught absolutely zero of this. And by the way, both undergrad and graduate school, one of the majors and specialties I had was entrepreneurship. So although I learned a lot about raising money and case studies and operating businesses and challenges they may have, it's more of an awareness building exercise rather than a technique. I think the way I learned is that, I was a fairly early employee at Dell. And at one point I could tell the market was changing there. And so I decided to leave to see if I had the same DNA old Michael did. And so when I left, I had to, learn a little bit. And one of the best things I did, I think at the time I was probably like 29. I connected up with a guy who was like 36 who had started and sold a company. And so that guy had already crushed himself with all the mistakes. And so he gave me enough guidance to get me going down the right path, and occasionally I think you'll find people like that. I mean, people who have taken a company from nothing to even something moderate, they have so many war stories because, no matter what people, I think people always admire you when you're starting something, and they admire you when you're successful because they can see the fruits of your labor and maybe even participate in some of it. Nobody knows the 100 billion nightmares that happens in between, right? You go into zero in the bank, barely making a payroll. Your employees hate you. You hate them. I mean, it's crazy, the amount of stuff you have to fight through in order to make it. But I think that, anyway, I just wanted to share that. I don't think it's something you can get from a book. You can't get it from an MBA program, even a top one. I think it's something where you have to get moving and then find a couple of people. I think one very valuable person, whether you pay them or, by the way, here's another interesting technique that I did on both companies. I found the same incentive at an emotional level that the people that helped me start the companies had. Guess who else has that? Lawyers. You can find a corporate attorney who has to, again, stay in their job, and an IP attorney who, again, has to stay in their job, and give them a little bit of a lottery ticket. It depends on what time I think it is in the economy, whether they're being hit up and they're full. But in some cases, what I did is I just said, look, I'm going to give you a couple of points of this thing if you'll just help me handle all my IP filings and all of my corporate transaction elements just until I get to this point, right? And then you're free to go. And what that did is it brought a lot of expertise that has seen stuff across a lot of companies. And it also removes one of the most expensive costs on the planet, which is all the legal work that you might need as you get a company going and need, certainly filing IP. So I tried to remove those costs as a bootstrapper by adding them to the team and giving them the same lottery ticket with, again, very little risk on their end to be part of it.
And really, for them, mentally, they're trading a lot of hope and future, whether it's residual or whatever, income for time. So no one's really losing money. It's all an upside gain if things work out.
Yeah, exactly.
Man, this is great stuff. This is great. So, I could ask questions on this all day, and I just see all my clients who are going to be listening to this, all the entrepreneurs out there loving this because. I don't want to go backwards on this, but there's just too many hey, dude, let's do something together. And those just never really work out without really thinking through things. Also, I love what you're saying regarding, you learn what you need to, if you have the guts to persevere as an entrepreneur, you become so battle tested. If that's what's so beautiful about meeting entrepreneurs, even people who are take the money thing out of it, people that are out there even if they're just getting by, but they're doing stuff on their own and they're like, hey, I'm figuring this stuff out. They have to deal with fears, concerns, invisible stuff that somebody who's going to a 8-hour-a-day job doesn't ever have to deal with, but until roles reverse later in life when the person who was seeking freedom early gains freedom for a lifetime, where someone who's seeking certainty early is seeking, is stuck in a security trap. Let's talk about, first of all, you got to tell everybody, this is, let's talk about, was it Iceland? You got to tell everybody the Iceland story. Was it Iceland or Norway? Where did you end up on New Year's Eve? I forget. You were telling me the story, but
Well, it's ironic that you asked that, because I just did something very similar a handful of days ago.
Give us the Paul Kirchoff. How Paul Kirchoff enters a country and just ends up in. Are you married right now? Are you dating anyone?
No, I'm a super bachelor.
So I can ask. Okay, cool. So I can ask all the questions. I just was, because this is how does Paul Kirchoff go into a foreign country where no one knows him and ends up being the life of the party, surrounded by a bunch of I'll make it sound really good, Icelandic women who should be on cover models. So
that may not be far off from the truth. But well, I'm going to give you a very, very important, and I'll make the answer as quick as possible, because there's a lot of what powers that. And this, I think, starts to shift gears from business into much more important stuff, which is like happiness in life. The interesting thing about the stuff we've been talking about growing a company and struggling through the different phases of leadership and everything else, is that there comes a time where you have to evolve your company. It goes from being, your show, to a company that's growing, to then cleaning out a lot of people that may be good or bad for the company. Lots of growth transformations that happen. I was very fortunate, because at the same time the company ironically was transforming, I was transforming myself. And there's probably a much longer conversation on how I actually did that, because to me it's still a little bit of a miracle. I'm not a self-help guy. I never have been. I honestly don't have a clue what Tony Robbins teaches. I have some very good friends that are very successful entrepreneurs in personal development. I have no idea what exactly they teach, and they're some of my best friends. But I had an opportunity to put together my own curriculum at the right time of life that helped me transform into what I can only describe as probably 99% of the time being indestructibly happy. And there's many things that allowed that to happen. In a nutshell, some no doubt rewiring of my brain, such that many insecurities that all of us have and I had in my past, they got rewired to where I just don't feel them anymore. When you do that, and your emotions are not governed by your past into any kind of a negative state, not sadness, not anger, not resentment, not regret, not grief, none of that. When it goes away, you suddenly become, there's something that happens in your life to where you become not only much more happy and emotionally powerful, but the rest of the world in front of you, you start to live in what people always describe as the present or the now. When that happens, there's no need to worry about the future, because you are so contained in your own happiness that you now no longer seek anybody's approval. You now no longer care what kind of car you drive. You can literally just be. So one of the things that happened as I transformed the company is I was transforming myself. And one day, I don't even remember, there wasn't a hard date, the work that I was doing on this miraculous curriculum, it just started. I realized that I just wasn't feeling, negative states anymore. And what I started to do is to do things that I had always put off. One of which was to adventure. And I took it to such an extreme that one year, the trip that you're talking about, it was maybe the day and a half before New Year's Eve. This is probably 2 or 3 years ago. I called my friends and I said, you know what? This is right at the tail end of this transformation. I said, I just feel like I need an adventure. So I literally bought the ticket at 11 p.m. At 6 a.m., I'm on a flight to Iceland. I know nothing about the country. I know roughly where it's located. I have no idea what the weather's like. I just knew it was going to be cold. So I roll in there, and through a series of events that were pretty miraculous, in a 36-hour period, I ended up flying across the top of an exploding volcano, believe it or not. I ended up singing Johnny Cash.
You can't just tell everybody what you did. You tell me. Let's take us back to the. Yeah. You're walking by. You walked by the bar, right?
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Okay. So tell us. Give us the details, man. Some people are taking notes right now. They went.
Well, so what ended up happening is I get on the plane. I sit next to a guy. He says, where are you going? Or he said, who do you know there? Why, are you going there for New Year's? I said, yeah. Who do you know? I don't know anybody. You're the first person I've met from Iceland. He says, that's incredible. You don't know anything about my country and you're going there for New Year's Eve. That's ridiculous. And so he said, well, when we land, if you walk across the road with me, I am a pilot, and I'll give you an experience for Iceland. I'm going to take you 200 miles to the north. We're going to fly past a volcano that's exploding. You can take some pictures and see something nobody else from America is probably going to see from this vantage point. So of course I go over there. We get back at we landed at 6 a.m. We get back at 11 a.m. I walk into the hotel. The hotel guy, and it's pitch black at like 11 a.m. or whatever, he's got fruit baskets out. And I go, do you guys normally have fruit baskets out in the middle of winter? And he said, no, this is for you, Mr. Kirchoff. You rented the presidential suite. And I said, what are you talking about? I literally got the last room that you guys had online. It was like $400, which is, seems like reasonable for last second for New Year's Eve. He's like, nope, you have the presidential suite. It's where Ronald Reagan used to stay when he used to come and talk to Gorbachev during the Cold War. And I'm like, holy shit. So I get up there, massive pads. It's got windows and 300, it's the highest building in Reykjavik. So I go to sleep a couple hours, wake up, walk downstairs, and have a backpack on. The guy says, can I give you directions? And I said, nope, I'm going to keep this adventure going. I'm just going to head in a direction. So about 5 hours later, it's about 5:30 p.m., 6 p.m., and there's about 300 drunk Icelanders in one pub. I walk in there and I'm like, this is, I got to figure out what I'm doing in the next 24 hours for New Year's Eve. So I park it at a bar. I meet a lady, I meet a guy, and I go, why is everybody here at 6 p.m.? They said they love karaoke. And I'm like, holy this is my chance. So I walk up there. I tell the guy, do you happen to have any Johnny Cash? I just happen to be wearing all black as well. And he says, oh my God, these guys love Johnny Cash. And so I said, put me up there. So I get up in front of 250 Icelanders, 6 p.m. I sing 4 songs. They're just loving it. I walk down and these 3 guys go, hey man, that was awesome. Like, we can't believe it. By the way, they introduced me as Uncle Sam from America, by the way.
Oh my God.
But anyway, so I came down there. These 3 guys say, who are you here with? And I said, by myself. I met those 2 at the bar, and you 3 are the next ones. And turns out these guys were Olympians. So of course they asked me, what am I doing? I said, I have no idea for New Year's Eve. They said, where are you staying? I said, this presidential suite I accidentally rented. And they said, holy cow, we've heard about it. We've never been there. And I said, well, why don't you guys invite some friends and come to this suite tomorrow night for New Year's Eve, and we can watch the fireworks from way up top. And sure enough, it turns out that they ended up inviting the deputy prime minister. There were Miss Universe candidates that came, the top heliskier, more Olympians. And I remember just sitting there on the couch at about 2 a.m. These people are still talking and just kind of in bewilderment about how the universe can lead you in a direction and how this transformation was complete, because this would never have happened in a previous state. And the truth be told is that since that moment, I have had way more experiences, equally dramatic, some on my own. I've flown to Hawaii on a whim and drove a lap around it and literally did everything you can do on Hawaii and came home for a meeting the next morning. I've been to, Santiago, Chile. I just got back from Easter Island, which is 2,300 miles from the nearest continent, all by myself. So all of that, I think every time I do stuff like that, I get a lot of messages from other entrepreneurs where they feel like it's because of success that is allowing me to live like that. And the truth is, it has very little to do with money. It has way more to do with the complete emotional independence that I have that allows me to go face first into the universe with no fear and no negative, emotions for the most part. And that, by the way, I've told many people, the only thing more valuable to me in my life than that I've achieved, which I think is very rare, is the health and safety of my kid.
Right.
Everything else, every car, every office piece of furniture I'm looking at here, everything else is not even close to how valuable that happiness is. But it's very tough to get.
Wow. Well, it's oh, watch this. So I just sent. All right. So I have 7 kids, right?
Yeah.
So they're 12 and under. And so I sent my wife. So to in your story, I write down the note. like my wife and I have this language pattern, which is not like, I know it wasn't the healthiest, because it was like, when we kept saying, well, it's also not bad either. It's not bad. But we were saying like, when we're billionaires, this is what we're going to do or get, blah, blah, blah. And so I just sent her a note as you were talking. I said, what are we putting off until we are billionaires, that if we said, fuck it, let's figure out a way, would make our life an even more adventure, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's a phenomenal question, because there's like this disillusionment, and quite frankly, I think we'll go down. Here's my punchline to the joke, and then we'll talk about actually this stuff, because I think everybody, including myself, is gaining a lot of value from it. My wife sends back a note, laugh out loud. I had Grace read what you wrote because I was driving. Poops, no swearing, Daddy. Yeah, that worked out. So, what I find is the trap. So I love it. Like I wrote down your note, like face first into the universe. In my book, I talk about the traps of life, and one trap that we have right now that I'm struggling with, just totally open to all my listeners and yourself, is we have 5 kids in Catholic's private school, and while we enjoy it, it's like when you travel and miss a good day of school, the teachers are like, oh my gosh, like my daughter got a D in computers because they have computers 1 day a week, and she missed like 3 days because we were traveling or sick or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that just totally delegitimizes the value of learning computers in a Catholic school, because my kid is on her iPad and she's more of a whiz at this stuff than I am. So take your D and shove it. So I have so many questions, but like, what's your thoughts on, and listening to me hear this, because with most guys, it's like, Lee Bryce is coming in town next week, and we have mutual friends, and he's a country artist, and we were on his bus 2 years ago. It was so much fun, and he's coming in town, and I'm like, you know what? Maybe we'll skip it this year because the kids are so young. Blah blah blah. Yeah. But what was it? I mean, the rewiring of just allowing you to go face first into the universe, man. I mean, this is great shit, Paul. This is the stuff that people want to hear.
Well, the interesting thing, I think, is that it seems like business success, including some new ventures that I have going on, are coming 10 times easier also because of the personal transformation. But I just want to say something really quick. I think that whether people want to hear it or not, you can't. I have many of my own philosophies, especially after getting to the point that I am. And it's kind of funny, because if you say something as bold as like indestructible happiness to somebody else, somebody who's not there can't possibly understand how empowering it is when you actually get there. Because I really believe that like 0.1% of the population actually gets to where I feel like I am. And I only know this from having my own breakthroughs and then watching everybody else, and when they get upended by a relationship or a job issue. So it's very unique, and I'm grateful for it. And it was hard fought. But I think that at the end of the day, you cannot possibly be the best version of you unless you are emotionally independent of how you look at yourself, how you perhaps don't judge yourself against others. And that includes in material possessions, in recognition, all the things that as entrepreneurs we are forged to value. You have to let all of them go and be so emotionally independent that you're a badass. And even when things are not going well, it has no reflection on you. It's just a moment in time that you have to work through, and you will get back to the shining star that you are. When you really believe that, and you're not comparing yourself against anybody, which is a great way to start some negative emotions, you start to let go. And the second you let go is the only opportunity that I think you can actually become happy. And I'm also a very, very firm believer that happiness is exactly like, being in the airplane with oxygen. If you are not centered and happy emotionally, right, by yourself, you cannot possibly be the best version of you to your significant other, to your employees, to your business partners, or to your kids. And I know this from real life, right? If somebody would have said, hey, tell me about Paul, right? Like 5 years ago, they'd have been super hard worker, smart guy, creative, great dad, blah, blah, blah. And the truth is I was a very, versus everybody else, a very solid human, great morals, great ethics, everything. But what I've realized is that even being that, which you probably are too, Ed, if you haven't found what I have found, you are still governed by insecurities that might have happened a long time ago in your life. I'll give you a very transparent one of mine, right?
Sure, please.
Which is no longer there, by the way. So when I was growing up and I was very young, right, we're talking like 15 years and younger, I had best friends whose parents were both orthopedic surgeons and rich. I was very middle class. My parents were poor. So I didn't have the things that they had. They were getting new stuff all the time, taking trips to Hawaii, and I couldn't do any of that. I fell in love with a girl who lived on the top of a hill with a very successful set of parents, and I lived on the bottom of the hill. And then one day she didn't like me. The point is, all those things build up in you. And then you find yourself in school and you're getting B pluses, but your friends are setting the curve as A's. All of those things can start to drive, even in the best human, a element that you are not good enough.
Totally,
right?
totally.
And then all of a sudden what happens is 40 years later, you're in a relationship and your wife or a girlfriend or a boyfriend or whatever says, hey, go do this. And what happens is in your head, you hear somebody talking down to you, right? Well, guess what? It may have nothing to do with them. It's you pulling all this junk, which you don't even know exists, up to the front. And guess what? That little transition point from what you heard into your now negative emotion causes you to be destructive to yourself and the relationship and whatever. I'm not saying like, somebody's going to go violent or crazy. I'm just saying you can just feel bad. And so the second you can deal with those things in your past and rewire so that the stimulus doesn't equal the output, then you're cured. You're cured. And in my case, I think that there were 5 things that governed me. The fear of not being good enough, one of them. But as soon as they were cured, I probably solved 90% of things that held me back from everything in life, including traveling, including wanting a nice car and a big house and wanting to be a billionaire. Guess what? I don't give a shit about any of that stuff, because what matters to me is staying super happy, dancing in front of videos and posting them on Facebook like a fool. People love that stuff because I'm not governed by what anybody else thinks of me. And let me tell you one last thing, Ed, because to me, this was a home run. In the last handful of years, as I've become who I am today, and my social network of very successful people has grown all over the place, I've become very good friends with a couple of people who are self-made billionaires, right? And these guys have invited me on their super yachts and all sorts of shit. One guy has I don't even know. He probably has 30 Ferraris. And the reason that guy loves me is because I have what he doesn't.
Totally.
And it's the only thing that matters. And he's a little bit older than me and he knows it, right? He needs to get there because none of that other stuff means anything. And I don't even care about it, So I think that, no matter what we talk about in business, and, I do think that it's very valuable there's nothing wrong with wanting things and to wanting a better life and providing for your family or whatever. But I think, I'm telling you, there is not a single thing on this planet other than, my kids' health and safety that I would trade for the pursuit of and the stability of emotional independence and happiness, because it is by far and away what allows me to do the stuff that that I'm doing now.
So I mean, I spent years training in NLP and hypnosis and all that stuff, and been an avid student of self-help. I can hear people saying, "Okay, Paul, this sounds freaking amazing," and I know we're running short on time.
Yeah.
But maybe this is a round 2 sometime, maybe live when I come to one of your Epic's worldwide adventures, because we're going to talk about that in 2 minutes. But What is the short answer on how you rewired your past experiences into a new foundational view of the world and what Paul Kirchoff's all about?
You're asking, like, what did I do to make that happen?
Yeah, like when you said I'm going to create my own life's curriculum. I mean, where did that? Did you just make that up one day and just say screw it?
No. I've had a kind of a philosophical debate because, like I said, I think I'm very raw at all of the personal development because I only know what I did that worked. So I don't really know. Quite frankly, it's kind of like starting a business. Like if you're a creative, like who cares what anybody else has done before you, right? I mean, you're here to forge a new path, so who cares? Yeah,
you're clean slating. Exactly right. I think actually, I've had arguments with really high level guys. I mean, one of the foundational things I learned from Richard Bandler, who was the founder of NLP, was he's like, well, if you can disconnect a lot of your past, which they have a whole system on that, but whatever. But if you most people are unhappy because they don't have anything driving forward. They have nothing in their future that lights them up, that they feel like you brought up a Ferrari, like they want to get their butt to that thing and their anticipation and they're enjoying their life. They don't have anything in their future that lights them up at all, so they spend 99% of their time in their past usually about shit that just doesn't work for them, right? So, yeah, keep going on your philosophy because this is more about you right now, and it's working.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I guess I don't know whether it's a philosophy. I think that when you've arrived at this state that we're talking about, when you no longer think about how to act, it just becomes you. Like when you're in the state, you're not artificially trying to remember to do gratitude practice, right? For example, you are actually grateful all the time, and it's a way of operating. So that's kind of the end state, I would say.
Yeah.
But
which by the way, if you're bringing up gratitude as your key driver, I mean, gratitude has been shown to be the number one highest state. In the fastest way to get out of any negative state is to switch to gratitude, right? So, right. Well, so thanks for bringing that up.
Well, and quite frankly, I think that, like I said, I think that gratitude is something that can be used as a stopgap measure, which I certainly used it for a little bit. But then I think, like I said, it becomes you. But I just wanted to say really quick, you had asked a question of, kind of, what did you do, right? What was your curriculum? Which is, we may not have time to go into. That may be a follow-up discussion. But what I will tell you is that I definitely agree and believe whoever came up with it, which I'm not even sure. I might have met the guy, believe it or not, of positive psychology. But the thing is, there's this hierarchy of human emotion. At the very, very top is certainly appreciation and gratitude. And then you get into like joy, and then it kind of goes down into indifference, and then you get into like, sadness, and then anger, and then rage. And the very, very bottom is hopelessness. And my view, which no one has ever, shown this to me, it's kind of my own view, is that in your life, especially as an entrepreneur, you have three concentric circles that have some overlap. But these circles are family, and then there's work, which matters, right? And then there may be like, significant others. And in any one of those things, if any one of those ever drops to hopelessness, then you have no other choice but to cave in or transform. And if you're lucky enough, like I was, to have one of those things feel like hopelessness, and you ask yourself a very important question, which most people do not, especially strong personalities that are entrepreneurs. You ask yourself, I wonder if it's me. I wonder if it's me. And then you go to town trying to dissect things like, what makes me that would cause me to feel this way, right? And then all of a sudden, if you have the right set of help or curriculum items or whatever, which again, we may not have time to get into, then you start to attack it as if it was your last breath of air or your last bite of food, and that is when transformations have the opportunity to happen. And there's a lot of stuff that I've learned. I believe it took me 7 months, somewhere in between 5 and 7 months, to like not feel the things I used to feel anymore. They just don't come. And I don't know what point it was that it didn't happen, but I know there were 5 things that I put together, and I'm sure just to finish this conversation, because nobody would want to not know what the 5 things. And again, I can't say anything about whether this works for anybody, but I will tell you this: if I would have done any one of them, nothing would have happened. And the problem with personal development, even though it's well intentioned, is that nobody's going to transform by reading a book. Nobody's going to transform by going to one seminar. I think it's something that you have to pursue as if your life depended on it, because quite frankly, it might, And for me, just to really quickly to kind of generalize, when you enter the opportunity to transform yourself and you are in a negative headspace, the first thing you need to do is to stop being negative, right? And one of the techniques that somebody gave me was, as soon as somebody pisses you off, whether it's your fault or theirs, it doesn't matter right now, you just immediately say thank you, right?
Totally.
You thank them.
Totally.
No matter what happens, you thank them. You say, thank you for being such a jackass, because you're giving me an opportunity to learn how to deal with jackasses. And the second you do that, you're immediately up at the top emotion, gratitude, and it just helps to alleviate your angst right away, right? So that's a stopgap. It doesn't transform you at all. But my pieces were, and these things happen simultaneously, which is kind of where the miracle comes in, is that the only person that I actually did have some help with, and this is the role they played, was a master NLP guy.
Oh, nice.
And it was through a recommendation of a friend. And this guy was a ex-wrestler Olympian. He was a New Yorker, probably one of the only personalities that could keep me contained and not let me smooth my way around, something from a talking perspective. He was hardcore. Guy interviewed me for about 18 straight hours, every relationship I've ever had. And at the end said, dude, you got a lot of stuff working there, but these 5 things are probably the bulk of what's causing you issues. And he nailed them. And the funny thing is, when he told me what these issues were, right, fear of not being good enough was one I've shared, then interestingly enough, like nothing was a surprise. Like I kind of knew them already.
Totally.
But to have somebody else say, here's what they are, and then, oh, by the way, here's how we're going to dig into your past and help rewire. That guy's role was to diagnose, confirm, and provide an early solution, right?
Yeah.
The second thing I did was certainly the gratitude practice in the morning and at night. I did it twice because I think that it was helpful to stay positive while you're trying to transform your emotions. The third thing was there was a book called Loyalty to Your Soul, and it provided me the foundational element and education that was actually being reinforced by the conversations and lessons that this guy was giving me. So it's kind of like 2 different ways of learning. One was audible and writing notes, and the other one was reading a book simultaneously. By the way, that book was recommended by somebody completely unrelated to the guy. So that was some of the miracle here.
Yeah.
So, and then what I used to do is I would rewrite the notes. Everything I could remember, every day I would rewrite the notes. And it got to the point where at the end of 6 months, I was literally writing close to 50 pages from memory. So imagine every day you're learning new stuff, but you're rewriting everything that you've learned up to that point, right? Every single day, over and over and over. And it starts to drill it into you. And then, of course, at some point when you learn that, let's say, guilt is one of the issues that you have to deal with, there's a place for guided meditation. So I would always take a dog for a walk for an hour every day. And I would zero in on self-love, or zero in on abundance, or zero in on forgiveness. And these things repetitively over months began to contribute. So when you put all that stuff together, I may be missing one, but when you put all that stuff together and you're hitting it like 3 hours a day, right, then at some point, like the wiring really does change, and then life opens up, because you're not governed by your past, and there's no need to even think about the future. You just are.
Yeah, I love it, dude. I love it. Well, first of all, thank you for sharing that. I think this is going to be an interview I'm going to make people listen to. my clients are going to be like, hey, you're not allowed back to our room unless you listen to Paul's interview. Cool. Let's transition. We only have a few minutes left, but let's transition to like what your focus is now. Specifically, I want to talk about something I'm involved with as well. Excited about, which is your Epics Worldwide program, and it's an exclusive social business community. But where did this? Obviously, I think this came from. This is kind of your unique thing, but tell us a little bit more about what you're thinking, because you and I have not spoken about this at all.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, part of freeing up from the agency gave me chances to develop new businesses, and the one that you're speaking about is a private community for entrepreneurs that are going to be very active in teaching and helping each other open doors in business. Right, very material, active participation, but who also want to not wait, like we've been discussing this whole time, to go experience some of the greatest experiences on the planet. So we built some software, and when people come in, we're gathering information about what you're great at from a skills and business perspective. Later, we'll be able to ask the membership, hey, what's your number one need for help? And if it's raising money, we already know the people that are 10 out of 10s in raising money, and they're going to engage and help provide guidance and assistance. There's more to it from a business standpoint. But when you get to the back end, there's a bunch of amazing experiences, some of which I've had and some which I want to do, that are presented for the membership. And as people see things that are interested, they vote. And as the votes get beyond a threshold, we'll go make that trip happen. And so all of a sudden, people are going to experience some of the most amazing things on the planet with incredible peers, where they can have fun, discuss a little bit of business, but really just blow steam off. And what I've seen over time of going to places like Richard Branson's Necker Island and many other places is that when you bring very talented entrepreneurs together, they're all CEOs, and you take them and they experience an amazing experience on the planet, they forge brother and sister level relationships. Business comes out of it. And more importantly, they can be themselves in these environments because they all share the same headaches, and they all can talk about it while making sure that life isn't ticking by. And so it's a little bit, I'm the poster child for this, obviously, but every time I go do these things, everybody wants to know how you get there. So my feeling is, if you can bring really smart people together and they can accelerate business success, they can share techniques on how to free yourself up from that business success to have more time. And then you have a place to go, to jump in the back of a Russian MiG jet fighter and go past our atmosphere into space. That's actually one of them that's in there right now.
Wow.
There's amazing stuff on the planet. And so we're lining them up and facilitating, business success and a lot of amazing relationships. And I just looked a second ago, this is probably going to officially launch here in the next few weeks, but we already have 250, and it looks like about 350 talented people just like you that are already queued up and going through the onboarding process. So it's going to be successful, and it's going to add a lot of value to people's lives.
Yeah, I love it, man. If you're not friends with Paul and you're listening to this, go ahead and friend him, and you'll see. And then epicsworldwide.com, epxworldwide.com. Right. Is this site? Dude, you're just killing it. I want you to tell us. I have two quick ones for you.
Sure.
Number one, what's your biggest takeaway from time spent with Richard Branson? I bet you get this question a lot.
Well, here's the interesting thing is that, and I don't mean this in any kind of bragging way, because I've told people recently, it sounds stupid, but I feel kind of knackered out, right? I've just been there.
You've been there so many times, right? Yeah.
But in the,
you're like the kid at chocolate chip, the Willy Wonka's chocolate factory who's been allowed there like every weekend.
Yeah, but here's the deal. I will tell you this. In the let's just, I don't know exactly what the count is, but let's say 10 times. In 10 times that I've been there, the first 9 times, I never even took a picture with him. It was more important for me to be there to enjoy that person's company and the peers that I was with than to be there for a celebrity picture. Only this last time when I was there, where I had some time with him, did I present something to him, which we haven't even spoken about. It's another software company that I'm building that is around accelerating social good. Yep. I felt like I had something so remarkable to present to him, not needing anything from him whatsoever, but just to share it with him, that he became incredibly enthused about it. He's helping to open some doors for me. And that's when I was sitting there and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna at least ask this dude to send a message of motivation to my son. So I still never have taken or posted a picture with him other than a message for my kiddo, because it was more important to me that when I wanted to engage in something with him, since I didn't need anything from him, that I would share something of value to him rather than the other way around. And I think it paid off.
And I think you're saying something there that, which by the way, I think it's why people like you and why these guys want to be around you is, most people miss this. Like your job when you have an opportunity to support, or actually, I gave the answer, but like when you have an opportunity to be around people that have way more, quote unquote, like whether billions, millions, whatever, of success, and you'd like to be a welcomed guest in their inner circle, your job is to observe and listen for when they need something. And then if it's there or something that you can align with, you need to be the giver, not the taker, because everybody is freaking taking and asking from these people, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the case. There's nothing wrong with wanting to get a picture or to meet a celebrity that you've like looked up to all your life. But I think the interesting thing is if you show up around that celebrity and they know you and you have never asked them for something, then when you do, they take it very seriously. And, I don't know. I mean, like I said, there's nothing wrong with either way, but I think that certainly served me well in this case.
Cool, buddy. Well, hey, is there anything that we have not, I mean, this has been phenomenal. I have 3 pages of notes. This was great. I really didn't know, we hadn't talked in so long that I didn't know exactly where we were going to go, and everything you've mentioned and shared has just been solid gold.
Cool.
So is there anything you'd like to ask of my audience or anything we can support you with? Obviously, check out epicsworldwide.com. We'll have the link in the notes. And is your software that's going to help with the social change, is that live yet? Is that available, or is that something we'll have to?
I think it's going to launch somewhere between Valentine's Day and South by Southwest. So February 15th or 14th to March 15th or so, somewhere in there. We're just finishing it up, but it's got the potential to help a lot of things that are for social good. It's kind of funny, how there's like the passage in the or maybe not the passage, but the lesson in the Bible where it's like, would you rather give people fish or teach them to fish? This is basically outfitting all the teachers with rods and tackles for everybody.
Love it.
So if we need to save the whales or, the forest around your house, we can do that much faster with what I'm doing. So
awesome.
Hopefully it'll be interesting later.
Is there any last parting words you'd like to share with my crew?
No, I mean, I think we covered everything. We covered lessons from starting companies to emotional independence. I'm not sure what else anybody needs, for God's sake. I know,
for God's sake. If you have happiness and you have some advice on making money, you got it. So, all right, everybody, check out my main man, Paul. Paul, you are an inspiration. I appreciate you. Thanks for being on the Ed O'Keefe Show. Hey, it's Ed here. Thanks again for listening. But real quick before you leave, I want to tell you about 2 quick things. The 2 most common questions I get, and I want to answer them for you before I let you go and give you a special offer. So for entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs, people who just like what we're doing here at Ed O'Keefe Show, if you need help growing your business, figuring out a business, accelerating up the speed at which you accomplish your goals, make an impact and create bigger contribution while building a life that you were really meant to lead. First and foremost, do me a favor and subscribe to Ed O'Keefe Show, the podcast, and share it. This is a mission I have to have 1 million people downloading this every single month, and I cannot do that on my own. Secondly, pick up my book at www.timecollapsing.com. I give it away absolutely free. I just ask you pay shipping and handling. And, people ask me all the time, like, why are you giving it away free? Well, bluntly put, because I think I can make a bigger contribution in this world by getting that book into 1 million people's hands as quickly as humanly possible. Now, obviously, we have academies and coaching clubs and seminars we put on, and if those fit for you, come join us. But please, pick up the book and let me know what you think about it. Secondly, if you're an athlete or if you're not an athlete, if you're someone who has aches and pains and wants to live a long, healthy life, then I'd like to give you an opportunity to take advantage of what I call my anti-inflammation health pack. People ask me all the time, like, well, Ed, they know I own a health supplement company, and they say, like, well, do you take your supplements? And I go, yeah, there's 3 supplements I take every single day. It's Marine D3, Omega Flex, and Body Ready Omega. Now, there's a quick story behind it. So let me tell you what it is. Did you know that in 1983 or 82 to 83, did you know that obesity, heart disease, diabetes, and who knows if they can trace back Alzheimer's and other things to this same time frame, but skyrocketed in the United States. Coincidentally, it was the same exact time that the government came out and the FDA and all these people and started coming out with margarine saying fats are bad. Well, the fact of the matter is your brain, your heart, and most of your main organs are primarily fat. So in 1976, Dr. Jorn Dyerberg went up and he actually studied these Eskimos who lived in, I want to say Denmark. I may have it off. It was, Denmark. And they discovered that these people, they call them Inuits, were eating 80% seal blubber, like literal fat. Yet they had 0 heart disease. And across, the world, in Japan, the other population that literally smokes, drinks, and has horrible diets, but they eat fish all the time and seafood all the time, have more centurions. You know what that means? That means that they're living past 100 years old. So what is the commonality? Well, these populations have way more omega-3s in their diet. Now, over the past few years, what's happened is fish oil has gotten a really bad rap. And in a lot of ways, deservedly so. Now, I can go into this in depth. In fact, I'm going to do a whole podcast on the story. But to give you a opportunity, go to EdO'KeefeShow.com. That's EdO'KeefeShow.com. And I'm going to have like a special link up there or a banner that's going to let you go get my anti-inflammation pack for Ed O'Keefe Show listeners at literally 50% off. Here's why. I take this product religiously, and it is the number, I have probably a 5-point process of literally diffusing inflammation in the body, because inflammation is literally the thing that's causing most diseases in the body. It's the research behind it has never been more certain, and it's only growing. That like diabetes, heart disease, Alzheimer's, all these mega, even the big C word, which I wouldn't even say out loud on a podcast. Now, I'm not saying that our products can do anything to those diseases, okay? Because of FTC reasons, I can't make any claims. But what I would say is that if you're going to do anything to feel better, to have your joints feeling better, to have your body feeling better, I would go and make sure you are attacking the inflammatory process in your body. And these 3 products synergistically work magic on that. So I've sold over 500,000 bottles of these products. You're going to love them. We have great reviews, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So by going to EdO'KeefeShow.com, you can click on a banner or a link that's going to be there waiting for you, and it's going to take you to a page that'll give you a little bit more of a story, and as well give you a major discount that could allow you to feel as cool as I do or better. All right, that's it. Have an amazing day, and please share this to the world.
And thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the podcast. You can find the show notes for this episode as well as all the other podcast episodes by heading on over to EdO'KeefeShow.com. If you would, please go subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and leave a rating and review. Rating and reviews truly are the best way for you to show your appreciation for the show, because they help more people find out about the podcast and decide if this is the one for them. So until next week, it's time for you to go out there, take action, and inspire the world.